Welcome to the Bros Talking Soccer podcast, a podcast where three brothers generally talk about what's happening in American and European soccer. It is day 19 of the 2019 World Cup, and that is what we are talking about today. I say we loosely because it is just Dave Knittel here on the podcast today. Christian Middle Knittel is working, as is Matt Little Knittel, and our other friend Matt Leffler was busy today as well. So it's just going to be me on today's podcast. Before we get into talking about the two matches between Italy and China and Netherlands versus Japan, I wanted to give a couple quick plugs for our partners. We are a part of the Big Heads Media Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for tons of awesome podcasts. They have tons of podcasts about crime, history, family, game shows, like all different kinds of stuff. Sports are in there, obviously. Our stuff is on there along with another soccer podcast, and they got all different kinds of sports. So go to Big Heads Media to check all of that out. We are also a part of the Stadium Scene Network. Go to stadiumscene.tv for all kinds of sports content. They have podcasts on there, but they also have blogs, YouTube videos. The Stadium Scene podcast just did an interview with Bernard Pollard. If you're an American football fan, I know he won a Super Bowl. So again, they have stuff about basketball, NFL football, baseball, soccer, tons of soccer content on there. So go check all that out on stadiumscene.tv. Our question today, before we get to the topics, we always thank Jeff for sending in our question of the day on these podcasts. And our question of the day, I know, was loosely about Frankenstein footballers, but I wanted to pull up the exact question. So he would like us to put together a male and female footballer with the best qualities from others. So component parts are heading, shooting, dribbling, tackling, and leadership. Jeff, I'm just realizing that I misread this question. Reading comprehension is not my strong suit. So I combined a Frankenstein of both men and women into one. I think your question was more do one for male and one for female, but I'm just going to roll with it because that's what I prepared for this. So heading, I had as Christiane. I've been very impressed with her heading during this World Cup, and to generate the power that she's generated and the accuracy has been really impressive for me. From a shooting perspective, I went with Messi here. Now, Messi could have been for dribbling as well, but I picked him for shooting because he makes it look so easy, and his shot may not be the hardest, but he just places his shots so well. And if he gets a window of opportunity, you know that thing is likely in the back of the net, unless he's playing for Argentina. Boom, quick zing. But no, he's honestly incredible in so many different facets, and his finishing is incredible. So I want to take his finishing. For dribbling, I went with Carolina Graham Hansen, the Norwegian player who I've been so impressed with during this World Cup. Again, she's been so incredible on the dribble, keeping pace and pulling away from defenders. And so I would go with her dribbling. For tackling, I would go with Virgil van Dijk's tackling. He hasn't been dribbled past in something like 18 months. And a lot of that is down to his positioning, but it's also down to his tackling ability. And so that is what I would go. And for leadership, I went with Van Vick, the center back and captain of the South African team. She has persevered through so much and has just demonstrated amazing leadership. And so that's what I went with there. And so there's my hybrid Frankenstein of both male and female footballers into one. Let's talk about today's matches here. And so we had China taking on Italy in the first game. Italy prevails in this one 2-0. A lot of different things were going on here. Giacinti, who played basically center forward for Italy, and the lineups had Girelli at center forward, and Giacinti as right wing, but those two were kind of flipped, and Girelli kind of functioned as this hybrid right wing / center attacking midfielder for the time that she was on the pitch. And I say that because she came off in the 39th minute, not for an injury, but because she was basically tired. And that was, I guess it was apparently really warm there, but it was an interesting substitution. Italy had been off for about 6 or 7 days, and for her to have fatigue and be in that situation that requiring the sub is interesting to me, and I don't know if that bodes well for Italy moving forward in this tournament. So that's something to keep an eye on here. Again, formationally or just positionally, they were doing something interesting, Italy, which varied from the way that the lineup was listed online. So Giacinti was functioning as a center forward. Girelli was sometimes a right wing, sometimes center attacking midfielder, and sometimes on the goal kicks, she was almost a center defensive midfielder back because she was pretty strong in the air. And Bergamaschi was floating out on the right side. She was sometimes a right wing, sometimes a center midfielder, sometimes just a right midfielder. And again, there was a lot of fluidity with the positions of Italy, especially further up the pitch. 15th minute, Italy gets their goal, and it starts with Giacinti pressuring the Chinese defender Wu, who was the captain. She's in a 1v2, so Jacinti is guarding two Chinese players, and they just don't space themselves properly, and Wu goes to try to just kick it off Jacinti out of bounds. Jacinti blocks the ball well and goes down the line. She's the first one to get to it. She passes it on the ground to Bonansea at the top of the box. Bonansea kind of trips over the ball. She tries to play a pass in between three Chinese defenders, and it comes off, but it takes a deflection, at least one deflection, possibly two deflections, and it ends up coming off as a perfect pass. But again, I don't think this was the exact pass that Bonansea wanted to have. I think it's what she wanted to have happen. She didn't execute it well, but the result ended up happening. And so if that makes sense, it was just fortuitous from an Italian perspective. And it rolls to Bartoli. She gets there, she hits a shot, and is just absolutely cleaned out by Pang. I think it's pronounced Pang, the Chinese goalkeeper. And the ball is loose still in the box, about 12 yards out, and the goal is wide open. Maybe it's about 10 yards out. And Giacinti comes through, finishes it off, slides it into an open net. And overall, Italy gets their goal here. China, I thought, especially early in the match, were just making shocking mental mistakes that you don't expect of a team that has experience playing at the World Cup and has made I think up until this point, they've made 6 World Cup quarterfinals out of the 6 tournaments that they've played in. This is the first one that they haven't made the quarterfinals of. And specifically in the midfield and defense, they were just either tripping over the ball or just misplaying passes. And again, Italy didn't have to do a ton. Italy played relatively well, but China, I thought, played very poorly, especially early on. Both sides were committed to defending with numbers in the box. We didn't see too many instances where there were huge numerical advantages for the attacking side, and both again, they were just committed to playing defense and playing with compact numbers in and around the 18-yard box, and that played out throughout the game. 25th minute, Gamma, this is kind of a controversial situation. Gamma kicks Wang in the head after clearing a ball. And so Wang had stooped down a little bit and Gamma had raised her foot. It's slightly above hip height. She makes contact with the ball. She clears it out, and in her follow-through, she catches Wang's head. And so she catches him with her studs. This wasn't called a penalty. I'm ultimately okay with this not being a penalty, but I think it was a bit reckless from Gamma here. And from what we've seen in some of the other instances where penalty calls were given for, having studs go into an opposition player, they were called penalties. I think she benefited from not really following through greatly, and it was only slight contact, but it was slightly reckless, especially with the studs exposed on Wang. And Gamma and Italy were slightly lucky not to have a penalty called there. Giuliani, there was a couple instances in the first half where the ball was dropped back to her and she did not make good contact on her clearances. It happened at least 2 or 3 times in the first half. I can't recall too many in the second half, but that's something to keep an eye on moving forward as Italy progresses in this tournament. 28th minute, Zhu drops the ball to Wang Yang after a cross, and she hits this nice half volley. It's dipping and going into the back of the net. It's down the middle of the goal, and so Giuliani doesn't have to move side to side, but she still makes a very good save to tip it up and over the bar. China, again, was having hard tackles, and they had a couple instances where they slid with studs exposed, and they weren't given yellow cards. I think that they benefit to a certain extent from having that physical reputation. I think they'd committed the most fouls coming into this tournament, and the referee didn't give, I don't know if she gave any yellow cards in the game, but there were a number of tackles where China came through very physically and borderline dirty, especially because the studs were exposed and they were sliding right through Italian players. And no yellow cards given in this game. And so I thought China was a little bit lucky to not get a yellow card, and they benefit from kind of playing so physically earlier in the tournament. 33rd minute, there's just a simple long ball over the top by Italy to Bergamaschi. She's the first one to get to it. She just has more pace than the Chinese defender, has an excellent first touch and keeps it under control at pace where she still maintained her separation from the Chinese defender. That's not easy to do, to keep your control of the ball, not take too big of a touch to allow the goalkeeper to come out, not take a smaller touch where you kind of trip yourself up and allow the Chinese player to get back into defensive position. She did an excellent first touch, great second touch, and then she fires long post. She fires a far post, and it's just an excellent save by Pang there. And yeah, excellent save by the Chinese goalkeeper there, and it should have been 2-0 to Italy. I thought Li Ying, the number 10 player for China, was pretty much their only dangerous option moving forward. She was aggressive. She was direct in her 1v1s, and she really benefited when she was moved out to the right wing. She started the game more centrally, and once she moved out to the right wing, which happened probably about halfway through the first half, China started to have more possession. They started to look better in the game. Italy looked good through the first 15 or 20 minutes. Then they really started to drop off. I don't know if it was the heat. I don't know if it was the lack of lineup rotation in the group stage. And China looked the better side, especially with Li Ying out wide. And that was something that China wasn't able to generate a goal from, but that was where they looked really dangerous. 39th minute, I already touched on the Girelli sub for Gali. Again, really odd that happened in the first half for a player that had 6 days rest. And Italy, like I mentioned, or the broadcast mentioned, they only used 15 field players in the group stage. And that might be a decision with ramifications down the line, because these tournaments it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And we saw a lot of the other teams who have experience at this tournament and are preparing to go far have heavy lineup rotation, because it is a lot of games in a short period of time. 42nd minute, China has a free kick that's swung in by Wang Shuang, and there's a really good header by Li Ying again, and it's actually blocked by an offside Wang Shan and off the post. And so this was called offside, but if Wang Shan wasn't there, I don't think this would have been offside, and she wouldn't have blocked it, and who knows what may have happened from that. But that was more or less China's best opportunity. Yeah, after 15 to 20 minutes, China started to control the game, and that was coinciding with Li Ying moving out wide. And the last thing I noted last two things I noted. Bonansea throughout the game looked rather tired and unmotivated. Again, surprising, because Italy had a lot of rest. I know she had played a lot of the group stage, but it was surprising because Italy was coming off almost a week of rest. And the last thing that I noted, and this is something to keep an eye out for moving forward in the tournament, Gamma and Linari are so good at Italian center backs, but Gamma can sometimes be a little bit over aggressive and be a little bit too confident in reading the game. And what I mean by that is she will often use her intuition and jump into passing lanes that a player, that a player should theoretically play the ball into, and she's very quick to move there. But if a player has a sudden movement, or they play the unexpected pass, I think she can be pulled out of position. And so I'm going to look for, especially because Italy is going to end up coming against the Netherlands. I was hoping Italy would come up against Japan, because I thought it would be really interesting, because I think Japan's movement is the best of any team that was still in the tournament. So it'll be interesting to see if the Netherlands can take advantage of that, because, again, she's so good in 1v1 situations. She's very good on the ball. But in those situations where she's the off-ball defender and she's marking someone or trying to anticipate a pass being played, she will be overly aggressive. And I think that's an area that whoever Italy comes up against, moving forward, so I guess it would be Netherlands, and then if they continue to progress, that's something that they can look to exploit. She can be pulled out of position from that perspective. Halftime comes 1-0 to Italy. 49th minute, China doesn't get their goal. Italy gets their second goal. China is trying to play it out after Bonansea just has a giveaway. There's good pressure in the corner by Guagni, and she is able to then play it across to Gali, the substitute that had come on in the 39th minute. And Gali just has a touch to settle the ball, and then hits a low, hard shot to the far post. Pang, the Chinese goalkeeper, did not really react to this shot till late. It really kind of came out of nothing. It was a really weird play where the ball was struck relatively hard, but it wasn't the quickest. Again, it just kind of surprised the announcers. It surprised the players. I think it surprised me as well. And the last thing that I'll note here is that Bergamashi is running across Pang's view. She doesn't officially come into view, but she's running, and she could possibly screen Pang to a certain extent. And I think that might be why she reacts slightly slowly and isn't able to save this ball. But Italy takes a 2-0 lead and doesn't really look back from there. I thought Italy, again, they started the first 15 to 20 minutes of the match really well. Same thing happened in the second half. They looked the better side through 15 minutes or so. Then they really started to just fall off. They didn't really have to play well, but China really started to gain some momentum, and they just weren't able to score, which was par for the course throughout this tournament for China. They only scored one goal in all of their matches, all 4 matches. And, that was ultimately their undoing here, because they had opportunities. And even if they were just half opportunities, if they had, maybe more talented players or some players that could put shots on target, maybe they could have gotten through here. I thought it was interesting that China made all 3 of their subs by the 61st minute. It was a hot day, and I didn't know if that might come back to bite them. It didn't, because I don't know if they had 8 subs if it really would have made a difference. They just didn't have the finishing talent at the end of the day. Lanari, again, I thought was so good. I think Gamma gets a lot more of the plaudits because she is the captain and because she is a little bit more active, but Lanari is really good for Italy as well, the other center back, and just excellent positionally, had a lot of blocks, and she was really good. That center back pairing is one of the best center back pairings, I think, possibly in the world. So something to look out for and be excited about if I'm an Italian fan. China, not really dangerous. And the last thing I noted was that Giacinti did not look tired. So for all the Italian players that did look really tired, Giacinti, the center forward, number 19, just had tireless running throughout the game. She didn't look like she was tired whatsoever. And so I think a lot of that just benefited Italy, and her tireless running, created at least one of the goals. And that's how Italy gets their win here, 2-0. They're moving on in this tournament, I believe, for the first time they're ever making the quarterfinals. I could have that wrong, but or maybe it was the first time that they had won a knockout round match, because the last time they made the quarterfinals was directly after the group stage. I think that's what it was. So congrats to Italy, commiserations to China. Next match, we had Netherlands taking on Japan, and Netherlands prevails in this one 2-1, what I'll say, against the balance of play, because I thought Japan was probably the stronger side for 60 minutes or so of that game. Netherlands has, the first thing I wanted to mention, this stadium. This is the stadium in Rennes. Wherever this match was played has hilarious technical areas. The technical area that coaches need to stand in. Yeah, this was the one in Rennes, Rojan Park. The technical area that the managers need to stay in is one of the smallest I've ever seen. It's absolutely hilarious. So I wanted to note that before we talk about the actual match. Match kicks off. Best chance, or at least the best early chance, comes in the 5th minute. Netherlands has an attack after a Japan turnover, and that's where Netherlands' best chances came from, is when they got out kind of into space and were able to counterattack. And when that wasn't happening, Netherlands just had nothing going for it. But here they did create a turnover. Daniela van de Donk drives down the outside. She's then she's driving on the far side of the pitch, slightly in. She's probably about 15 yards in towards the middle, but she's on the far side of the pitch. She's driving at the Japanese defense. She gets a defender to commit half-heartedly, and then she slips in Martins out wide. So it was good play there. And then Martins has a really excellent cross with her left foot to the far post. Miedema had made a great looping run, and Van de Sanden makes a run near post. Miedema comes around the backside. She gets a full volley, but the Japanese defender is able to block it, and then it comes off the post. But that was a really good attack from the Netherlands there. Next thing I noted was Netherlands getting their goal. It came in the 17th minute. There's just a low-driven corner by Van de Donk. Absolutely terrible marking by Japan, and Martins gets a flick with the outside part of a foot. It comes off of and goes through the legs of Sugasawa and into the far side netting. Now, the Japanese defense on this corner was one of the strangest defensive schemes that I have ever seen. I personally am a proponent of zone. I think that zone marking, on zone defending, I should say, can be very, very functional, especially if you just focus on winning the ball and you don't worry about the runners and you just go out there and you win the ball. Other proponents of corners and set piece defending are man marking, and so you have to stay with your runners. Japan here did neither. It looked like they were in a man marking system, but they didn't follow their markers. They just sort of moved almost like a weird sort of hybrid zone man marking, but they weren't in either. And so there were a number of Netherlands players that had yards of space. Martins was the one who gets a touch here, but this was just terrible defending by Japan, and I really needed to call them out for that. 20th minute, Japan has their best chance up until that point. There's just great interchange and movement by the Japanese attackers. And so Sugasawa has a good run in between the center backs after, I think it's a slipped ball through by Iwabuchi. I didn't note who exactly played it in, but again, it was just really creative movement, and Sugasawa has a chance. She ends up hitting a sliding finish off the outside of the post. But Japan throughout the game, and as the game progressed, I thought that they got even better at this. They would make these runs, or what I would call, I don't know exact way to term it. I guess it would be like double runs is what I would say. So they would make a run where it would look like maybe they were running to a corner. And as soon as the Netherlands player sort of lost the Japanese attacker in their eyesight, they would stop their run or they would alter their run path, and they would create a little bit of space for themselves. And at that exact same time, the Japanese attacker who had the ball would play it into the Japanese player who had made that run. And they were constantly doing this and constantly creating space for themselves. And it's just fascinating to watch their movement. And that's why I really would have loved to see the matchup between Japan and Italy for that reason, to see how the center backs of Italy and the defenders would have matched up against that really creative attacking and sort of movement from the Japanese players. Now, the one issue that Japan runs into, and it's the same issue that Arsenal ran into under Arsene Wenger, in that sometimes they look for the absolute perfect chance to finish the ball, and they won't take a speculative shot outside of Sugasawa, who I think is one of the only ones that will take a half chance, the center forward for Japan. So many of the others are looking to combine and play the perfect ball before they're able to shoot, and it generates amazing goals. Their goal that they got today was absolutely incredible team play, but it also forces them to miss out on other chances that they should get if they would just take these slight windows of opportunity and maybe be a little bit more speculative. Noting to support this. Oh yeah. So I noted that Daniela van de Donk, it seemed like, again, I have no stats to support this, but I felt like she was more involved for the Netherlands today than she has been throughout the tournament. And I don't know if I just expected her to be incredibly involved because I'd seen highlight videos of her and I had heard her name from social media, and I knew she played for Arsenal and things like that, but I didn't think she was overly involved in all of the Netherlands matches up until this point, but I thought she was very involved in the game. Offensively, she was very committed defensively, and was just on the ball more in this game than anything that I've seen in the past. I could be off on that, and I don't know if the numbers support that, but just based on the eye test, it seemed like she was more involved. I also thought Miedema, the center forward for the Netherlands, could be a little bit smarter with her runs. So the chance in the 5th minute comes off of really great movement by her to create space for herself and have a looping run. But there were a couple of times in the first half where she was standing or she was in areas on crosses where she would be in the same area as her teammate. And there would be maybe 5 yards of space between them. And she needed to be smarter with her movements. If a runner was going near post, she needed to go 10 to 15 yards away on the far post, or have her runs be wider or something like that. Or there were countless times, especially late in the game, as the Netherlands just sort of devolved into a long ball team where she's very tall. She's one of the tallest players on the Netherlands team, and she's outside of the box while 3 or 4 of her teammates are inside the box, and she needs to be the one in there. She's their best ever, or their highest ever scorer in the country's history, and she's a tall sort of target for them to hit, and she was constantly outside the box. So I was really confused at some of her movement there. I think she can clean that up a little bit. I've been really impressed with the center midfield play of lots of different teams in this tournament. And so 2 players I want to highlight here were Groningen for the Netherlands and Sugita for Japan. Again, I thought that they were awesome. They were all over the pitch, box-to-box players involved in attack, getting back, defending as well. And so those 2 I wanted to highlight, who I thought had really good games today. First half was really entertaining, and it was much more open than I expected. I expected Japan to have a little bit more of the ball, to not let the game get so stretched. And in the first half, the game really did get more stretched. And as the half wore on, and then especially into the second half, Japan really started to control the game. But the match was relatively entertaining, especially through the first half. And then even in the second half, I'm not a Japan fan or a Netherlands fan, but it was fascinating to watch Japan just break down the Netherlands, and just they play such an attractive style of soccer. So that was great to watch. Netherlands they kept trying to knock long balls, especially get in behind. And the Japanese goalkeeper, Yamashita, was doing really well to come off her line and to cut those out. The Netherlands could have had a number of opportunities, but Yamashita was doing well to come out and close those down. 43rd minute, Japan gets their goal. And it's just an incredible team goal by Japan. So it might have started earlier, but kind of where I noted the play developing was when Sugita had the ball out wide. Sugita, the center midfielder for Japan, she has the ball on the left side of the pitch from a Japanese attack perspective. And the Netherlands doesn't put any pressure on her. So she just takes the space. She's about 30 yards from net when she picks up the ball. She starts driving diagonally kind of towards the net. And Netherlands nobody really steps to her. And she has a good 15 yards of dribbling where nobody steps to her. She then is able to play a ball across the top of the 18-yard box to Sugasawa, who was an excellent center forward. I said this on the podcast yesterday that I thought Japan needed to play her because she is such an outlet for them. And this goal is just, and throughout the game, she was doing great, just holding off defenders and just having traditional center forward play, which I like to see. So she checks the ball. She's got the Netherlands defender on her back, and she's able to hold her off, play the ball back to Iwabuchi, who does this really awesome step over. I think it was on Cronin, where she goes and she lets the ball run through her legs, and it's not a ton of pace. So she runs over it, and the ball is just like right on the other side. So it doesn't roll away from her. She's still under control, and she's able to kind of reverse field completely. And then it draws in another Netherlands center back, and she's able to slip it through to Hasegawa, who then just has a lovely chip over Van Veenendaal, the onrushing Netherlands goalkeeper. This might have been the goal of the tournament just for the team play and the interchange that happened there. It was fantastic goal by Japan, and it's 1-1 at this point. And like I said, as the half wore on, Netherlands just devolved, and even into the second half, it was just mostly long balls from them. They just didn't have any ideas, and that's a concerning sign to see moving forward from a Netherlands perspective. Sal is joining us here and says he was disappointed by that Japanese defense. I don't know. Maybe if you're talking about on the goal specifically, maybe, yeah, you must have been talking about on the goal, because throughout the game, the Japanese defense was okay and relatively good. It was just on that corner. I don't know what the heck they were doing. Second half starts, and the first thing I noted was this weird thing that happened. It's probably a throwaway thing, but the referee made Miedema get out of the D area. So the area on top of the 18-yard box that's kind of a semicircle and it looks like a D. She made her get out of that area on a goal kick. I am relatively confident. In fact, I'm about 95 or plus % sure that Miedema can be in that area on goal kicks. That area is only for the penalty kicks, because the defenders or the anybody really, attackers or defenders, need to be a certain amount of distance away from the penalty spot. But on goal kicks, because the 6-yard box is a rectangle and the 18-yard box is a rectangle, Miedema can stand in that area, and it's not an issue. So that was just something weird that I happened to note, and hopefully you found it interesting, because I certainly did. Probably should have fact-checked that before I said all this, but I'm pretty confident that it was correct. Japan, like I already touched on, their subtle movements are just so great, and I love that. Netherlands was just lacking any sort of movement. So whereas Japan was so creative with their movements in the attacking third, Netherlands just had nothing happening. There wasn't a ton of interchange. There wasn't runners from midfield. A lot of times it would just devolve into long balls from the back, looking for someone over the top, and or once the ball was into the attacking third, there would just be wing play between 1, maybe 2 or 3 Netherlands players. Generally, it was just 1 or 2, and then they would try to cross it into a bunch of Netherlands players who were standing there static, 4 of them, and it just was not good attacking play from the Netherlands. And so they really need to figure something out attacking wise, because they have talented players and they really should be able to interchange more. And I was surprised at that. Wide player to players pointing. Oh yeah. So then another thing that I noted is that the ball would be out wide, whether it was on the near side of the pitch or far side of the pitch, and Netherlands would maybe have some combination play. This is in kind of the middle third or maybe defensive third of the pitch. So not in the attacking third, but when Netherlands possess the ball in their own defensive third or maybe getting towards the middle third, and the ball would be on the one side of the pitch, there would be some combination play, and Netherlands would get the ball to a center midfielder or just someone in the middle of the pitch, and the right play would be to switch the field, and Netherlands players were pointing for the player who had the ball to change the point of attack, sort of go out of pressure where the Japanese defenders had sort of condensed into that area. And multiple times, the Netherlands player didn't open up. They just went right back into that pressure. And again, that's something to look out for moving forward in this tournament. I thought Netherlands could have done better to get out of those pressure areas and switch the point of attack quicker and just make themselves a little bit more unpredictable. So that's something to keep an eye on. 79th minute, Sugita hits the crossbar, and so she was released down the wing by Iwabuchi. I thought that she waited a little bit too long on this chance, but she was just patient, and ended up cutting the ball back onto her left foot and hits a bullet of a shot off the crossbar with her left foot. And it was unfortunate from a Japanese perspective. And then a minute later, there's a great save by Van Veenendaal on Momiki, and that was when, I can't remember if it was a cross or if the ball just popped free to Momiki. She has a fantastic touch where she cuts back from her right to her left foot, hits a lovely left-footed shot. It's a good height for Van Veenendaal, but again, pretty good save there. 87th minute, Van de Donk comes off for Roord. Again, I thought Van de Donk was having a good match and was working hard on both sides of the ball, so I was a little bit surprised at that. 88th minute is when Netherlands earns their penalty. So it's controlled in the middle of the park by Netherlands. And they actually do what I was talking about a minute ago, where Roord gets the ball and she opens up. So the ball's on the near side of the pitch. There's a little bit of possession, and then she possesses it, probably 10 to 15 yards towards the middle of the park, and then hits a curling ball out to the far side of the pitch to Berenstein. And Bernstein then is able to take on her defender one-on-one. She drives inside, and that's kind of this hybrid miscontrol / toe poke, but the ball eventually bounces free to Miedema, who's probably about 10 yards out, and she fires a shot. Kumagai is closing her down. She's maybe a yard away, but for those watching on YouTube, she looks like this, and for those not watching on YouTube, she's in a position where you would expect her to be. Again, when you run or when you move for balance, you have your arms at your side, but she definitely has them extended, and the ball hits her arm that is extended. Might be in a natural position, but again, she's making herself bigger, and this is going into the net. And so for that reason, it's called a penalty, and I'm in 100% agreement with the penalty being called. I know people are complaining about, what a defender's supposed to do, but I mean, if she had her arms by her side, like down and to her body, I would be fine if that would not be a call. But the fact that she had her arms outstretched, even if they are in a natural position, they blocked the goal and she made herself bigger there. So I'm okay with this penalty being called. Martin steps up in the 90th minute and converts it low into the right. It was really tough on Japan because they were the stronger side, like I said, for about 60 minutes of that game. Last thing I wanted to note is Japan had a corner late in the game. So it was the 90th minute +2, so second minute of stoppage time. And there's just a mad scramble. And it was a Netherlands player. I think it might have been Roord. I can't remember who, but they fall on top of the ball. And I'm not sure. The referee blows a whistle for a foul. Again, I thought that this was a tough call in Japan. I didn't necessarily see a foul, and somebody's laying on top of the ball or is on top of the ball. I'm more of the opinion you got to let the ball, you got to let it just sort of play out, especially after the dangerous rules were changed, where in the past, for those who follow soccer, know that like if you played while you were on the ground, if you played the ball, it was a dangerous play and it resulted in an indirect free kick. That rule has been done away with. And so now you just keep playing when someone is on the ground. And so again, I thought that the play should have continued here, and Japan can feel slightly hard done because there were opportunities. There was just a mad scramble and the ball was inside the 6-yard box at this point. So that was that. And that was kind of the last thing of note from this game. Netherlands prevails 2-1, and 7 of the 8 teams in the quarterfinals are European. Let's get to our of the days now. And so we have save of the day. I am going to go with, what am I going to go with? Excellent save by Pong. Yeah, I guess I'll go with the 33rd minute save by Pang on Bergamaschi in Italy versus a China match. Again, she's in on a breakaway, and it's great position from Pang. She does well to get over to her side, and just good reaction save. But that is my save of the day. My goal of the day is that Japan goal in the 43rd minute. That is probably my goal of the tournament so far. Just excellent team goal. So many different players involved, and just a lovely, lovely goal. So that is my goal of the day. My moment of the day is the Martin's penalty being converted and basically putting 7 of the 8 teams into the quarterfinals European, because that has never happened before. And it's pretty incredible display from Europe and their commitment to the women's game. It's starting to bear fruit there. Let's get to tomorrow we are off. I got to get my everything straight. This is what happens when I'm doing it by myself. I'm trying to juggle everything while I talk. So we will be back on Thursday, June 27th. There's only one match. It is happening between Norway and England at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that is going to be a really interesting one to watch. England had that super weird game against Cameroon, and it's really tough to take a lot from that. I have noted on the past few broadcasts, Bardsley as well as the center backs for England have not been conveying a ton of confidence for me in them. And so Norway is a team that can exploit that. Norway is going to be organized defensively. I really like Engen in the middle of the park, and Carolina Graham Hansen has proven that she can unbalance defenses, and England really needs to button things up there. I'm going to give England the slight edge, but this is going to be exceptionally tight. There's going to be everybody needs to be spot on for both sides because one mistake could be the difference in this game. And that's what happens when you get to the quarterfinals in World Cups. And so I'll give the slight edge to England, but I would not be shocked whatsoever if Norway scores because of a defensive mistake by either the center backs or the goalkeeper on England, and England doesn't find a way back into the game. So slight edge to England, but Norway is certainly no pushover there. Who I'm going to be watching for in that match is Engen. I mean, I've been harping on her every time I've watched her, especially as this tournament has gone on. I've become more and more impressed with her. She is the center midfielder for Norway. She is involved defensively. She is not the greatest with shooting, but she is really involved in build-up play and in possession and keeping the ball flowing. She's just fantastic, and I've really enjoyed watching her play. So that's my player I'm going to be looking out for tomorrow. Thank you, everybody who has joined me live on YouTube. Sal and Jeff, thank you for leaving comments here. I always appreciate you guys interacting. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you so much for listening. We also record live as soon as the matches end each day, so come join us and hang out on Bros Talking Soccer YouTube. If you liked what you heard here, please consider leaving us a review on iTunes. 5-star reviews would greatly help us out, and we would really appreciate that. If you want to follow us on Twitter, our Twitter's at BT Soccer Pod. Make sure to follow us, interact with us as we, are tweeting or chatting about anything happening in the soccer world, Women's World Cup or otherwise. Our email is bros.talking.soccer@gmail.com. Make sure to check out our website, brostalkingsoccer.com. You can read about myself, my two brothers, check out our past episodes, read and or visit some of our other content, and finalizing t-shirts. So those should be for sale in the not too distant future. And we also have hoodies and long sleeve tees currently for sale. And all that is available on brostalkingsoccer.com. Thank you so much for being here. I always appreciate you guys listening. It's so much fun for me to talk and interact with you. And so I look forward to Thursday when I am back recapping day 21 of the World Cup. I hope you have a great couple of days, and I'll talk to you soon. See you, everybody. All right, people that have been here, thank you. Sal, we are going to record, if you're still here, we're going to record our Quick Kick Picks video. I might be by myself. I don't know. Christian called while I was recording this, and so it might just be me or it might be Christian as well, but that should be out later tonight. And I always appreciate you giving your picks and interacting with us on that. And it's awesome to hear your coaching in the style of Wenger for your youth teams. I think that's good, especially at the youth team level. I think as make sure that they still aren't afraid to shoot the ball too. I really enjoy that attractive style of possessing the ball and all of that. But soccer, you do need to score goals eventually. So make sure that they're still working on that finishing part of it. But thank you guys for being here, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.